All right, my name is Tzvi. I live in Boston, I'm sorry. But I'm not from Boston, I'm from Jersey. Just briefly, I'll talk about myself because I really want to talk about the power of intuition in music. But before we get there, I grew up in New Jersey, Randolph, New Jersey. Anybody here from Jersey? Yeah, all right. Holy state in the nation. I ended up going to the conservatory in the 80s. I spent most of the 80s in the conservatory. And the main thing I did in the conservatory, besides learning music and the language that we've been speaking about and meeting Joe Maneri, I grew my hair. And because I'm Jewish, I had some really kind of awesome hair. You know? And then because it was the 80s, I turned it into a mullet, and the rest is history. But anyways, I graduated in 1990, moved to Brooklyn. I was living in Park Slope, and I realized now that I was a hipster before it was cool to be a hipster. That's funny, no? Anyways, and whatever, after a couple of years in Brooklyn, I hit something called the quarter-life crisis, which is, you know, like, what the heck am I doing with my life? My 25th birthday was the first attack on the World Trade Center in 1993, and so I took it as a sign, and so like all nice Jewish boys searching for meaning, I went to Amsterdam, and I actually played with Curtis Hasselbring in the streets of Amsterdam, believe it or not, and Wiley Wirth, if you know Wes's little brother. And anyways, long story short, I ended up in Israel and met Rabbi Jacobs and stayed there for 7.5 years and then moved back to Boston and been there ever since. And it's been a really interesting journey because for myself, finding a balance between music and spirituality has taken me a long time to reconcile because I'm a little bit of an extremist. I'm a very all or nothing kind of person. So when it was music, it was like, ah! That's all I ate, drank, and slept. And then when it became Judaism and Torah studies, that's all I did as well. Kept my chops up, but I wasn't playing professionally. It's only in the last couple of years that I've actually gotten my act together and found some kind of balance where I can express myself on a Jewish level through my music and find a connection to my music, to my Judaism, etc. and so forth. Anyways, that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about something a little bit deeper for myself, which is the power of intuition in music. So does anybody remember the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin? Of course you do. Nobody saw it? Everybody saw it. It was great. It's the first rated R movie I saw. My dad took me. It was a highlight of my little life. But anyway, so at the beginning of The Jerk, you have Steve Martin. He's living in somewhere in rural Missouri, and he's lying in bed. The whole story, it's basically he didn't know he was an adopted child, and he's living with a family that's very musical, and they experience rhythm, and he has no concept of rhythm, and he's always clapping on the wrong beat and getting everything out of whack, and it's really kind of awkward. And then one night, he's lying in bed, listening to the radio and eating a Twinkie, Olive Shalom, and he's sitting there eating the Twinkie, and there's some really bland music on the radio, and he doesn't realize it, but all of a sudden his toes start tapping together. And he realizes that he's got the beat. And so he starts tapping with the beat, and he gets up out of bed, and he starts doing these kind of gyrations, and he wakes up his grandmother and his parents. He's like, can you see this? I can feel it. I can feel it. And he was inspired, and he hitchhiked to St. Louis. And that's where the movie really takes off from. But the question is, what happened? Why was it that when he started feeling the beat, his toes started tapping together? That's really the idea. There's something deep going on that happens that we connect and relate to music on this deep intuitive level that we can't necessarily articulate in an intelligent way, but it's something that's real. Science has looked into this. And I'm quoting from a book now called This Is Your Brain on Music by Daniel, anybody read it? Daniel Levitt, I think it is his name. So the way that neurology describes this process of connecting to rhythm, and we call rhythm groove. When you're feeling a pulse, it doesn't mean being a groove like a hippie and walking around going, dude, that's so groovy, man. I mean, you could do that, but it means that you're feeling some kind of beat and you're having some kind of natural connection to it, and the pulse is called the groove. So according to science, they relate to it on an emotional level. They say the emotional response to groove occurs via the ear, cerebellum, nucleus, accumbens, limbic circuit, I don't know what any of that means, rather than via the ear auditory cortex circuit. Our response to groove is largely pre or unconscious because it goes through the cerebellum rather than the frontal lobe. So something's happening. What's that all mean? Who cares? What's happening, though, on a deep level, at least within our brain, we're bypassing our normative cognitive facilities, and we're having this intense relationship with music that's you can't necessarily articulate. And so this actually leads us to a very deep concept in Jewish mysticism. And it has to do with the distinction between what's called wisdom or intellect and what's called intuition. In Hebrew, the words would be chachma and bina. So intellect And I'm using the terms in a mystical, so I'll give you a better definition. But intellect is kind of like, at least the way the Jewish sages describe it, they say it's like this. Let's say you have a businessman. And the businessman, he's got a nice business, and he does a good job, and he treats his customers well. And what happens is, when the place is busy, he works, and he makes a lot of money. And when the place is not busy, what does he do? He plays solitaire. He looks up his favorite bands on YouTube. He doesn't go out and try to gather more business. That's what wisdom is, and in terms of an analogy. What it means is that wisdom is raw information, it's knowledge, but it's not necessarily anything you do with it. It's just knowing lots of facts. I'm sure you probably all know people like this, and maybe some of you are even like this. You can take the Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle and fill it out like you're filling in a form. You ever meet a person like this? I had friends like that. They're the same people, like they watch Jeopardy, they can answer every single question on Jeopardy. You know the type? Like they just know all the information. But just because they possess all this information doesn't mean that they're necessarily good at anything. Like have you ever studied for a test, got an A on the test, knew everything that was coming, and then you still really had no idea what you were talking about? That's intellect. You possess raw knowledge, but actually being able to take the information and do something with it needs another step. Now, intellect plays a role in music. That's how you remember the name of the songs, or the words, or the type of form it is. We're talking in a jazz context. That's how you can distinguish between, say, rhythm changes, or a 12-bar blues, or Cherokee, or whatever it is. But that's intellect. There's also certain types of music that are meant to be appreciated intellectually, like 20th century, certain types of 20th century classical, like the music of Milton Babbitt or John Cage or whatever, where they're specifically trying to give you an intellectual experience. But there's a deeper level as well. And the deeper level would be what we call intuition. So the way the analogy the sages give of intuition is that it's the shopkeeper, same thing, runs a good business, people come, he does a good job, but when there's no business, he gets out on the street and he tries to drum up more business, meaning it's the idea within the idea. It's a deeper level or a deeper connection to something. So I'll try to give you some examples to understand this. Do you remember when you were a kid and you learned how to ride a bike? Can everybody here ride a bike, by the way? I guess it's New York, everybody rides bikes. They've like got rid of all the lanes for the cars so you can have bikes now. And you don't have to obey any of the traffic lights. It's unbelievable. Bike riding is the best. So anyway, is that true in New York? In Boston, you just go, and if somebody hits you, you blame the person that hit you. But anyway, so when you first try to ride a bike, so how does it work? Somebody explains to you bike riding, and it makes sense. They say you have to get on the bike, and you need to balance, and intellectually you process it. And then your father or mother or some sadistic older relative, they take you to the parking lot, and they hold on to the back, and they say, okay, go. And then they let go of the back, and what happens? You fall right over. Why? Are you stupid? You didn't get the concept? No, it's because even though intellectually you got it, you didn't get it. It's kind of like juggling. My son, one of my sons, knows how to juggle, and he left his balls lying around the house. So one day I picked up and tried to juggle. I picked them up, I threw a ball, dropped it, threw another ball, dropped that one as well. I'm like, there's got to be a system. So I figure when you throw the ball up, when it gets to that point, when it crests the top, when it turns direction, so I figure you have to have some kind of rhythm. I tried with 2 balls. So I figure you throw up the first ball, you'll throw up the second ball when the first ball is up there, and then you catch the next one. There's got to be some kind of system. So that's what I did. I threw up the first ball, and I threw up the second ball, and then I dropped the first ball, and then I dropped the second ball. Because even though intellectually I understood this process, I didn't get it. But I was determined, so I kept doing it, and I kept dropping balls. And after about a half an hour, my back was killing me because I kept picking up the balls from the floor. But I kept trying, and every once in a while, I'd catch one. And then I'd catch 2. And at some point, it started to click, and I would just get it. I had like the feeling. I could feel the rhythm. Now, I didn't practice it the next day, so I don't know how to juggle anymore. But that's the idea. That's the idea. When you get into some kind of groove, you can feel it. It's like trying to interpret different types of music. There were 2 things when I was at the conservatory that we used to do to classical majors that we thought were really funny. One was the classical piano majors, they're very protective over the best, really expensive pianos in the conservatory. And so my fellow jazz musicians and I, we'd go and lock ourselves in those rooms, step on the dampening pedal, and scream into the piano, listen to like the harmonic, the frequencies scream back. It was a lot of fun. It's a kind of a nerdy music joke, I'm sorry. But anyways, you want another music joke? What's the difference between a frog and a trombone player? The frog has a gig. Okay, another one. Anyways, so the other joke that we would play on musicians was try to get classical musicians to play jazz. Because you see, jazz, the way jazz works, you have something called a swing. This is based on something called swing. It's really based on the subdivision of an eighth note. An eighth note is if you have a beat, it's going like this. So an eighth note would be dot, 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 dot. You split it in half. And so generally speaking, we play eighth notes evenly. You go dot, 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 dot. Sometimes, and especially like Miles Davis in the 50s and 60s, he was playing his eighth notes like that, very straight, dot, 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 dot. But in jazz, you swing it, which means that you delay the second eighth note. And not only did you delay the second eighth note, but you accent that eighth note as well, so it creates a little bit of a tension, and that tension is what's called the swing. It's going dot, 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 dot. I actually learned how to do this by listening to a lot of Stevie Ray Vaughan, so it's over-exaggerated, but you know, da-dum, ba-dum, da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. It's got a bit of a groove, it's got a feel. So if you give it to a classical musician, someone who can really play, someone who has a lot of chops, still they try to play it, since they don't get the feel, it sounds wrong. Even though they're doing everything right, it's kind of like Humpty-Dumpty-Dumpty-Dumpty. Just because they know what it is and intellectually they can process it, that doesn't necessarily mean that they got it. Ultimately, the reason why you connect to rhythm and you connect to groove is because groove, it's this feeling, but think about it, it's not an emotion. You're not crying or laughing when you're feeling a beat. You're just feeling it. What's happening is that music, it's bypassing your cognitive intellectual faculties, and it's speaking to you on this intuitive level, so you just start feeling the groove. I could sing all sorts of bad delight songs right now, but I'm not going to go there. But you get the point. You just start feeling the beat, and everything gets down, and that's what happens. Music bypasses your normal cognitive faculties and gets in there on a deep level. Why is this important? And I'll wrap up like this, because it has to do with really the secret, or one of the secrets to changing your mood and being happy and really appreciating and enjoying life. You see, most of us, our experiences in life, we're reactive. Oh, I got in a car accident. I'm angry. Oh, I got a ticket. I'm angry. Oh, I won the lottery. I'm so happy. And we just bounce around being happy, being miserable, being happy, being sort of in the middle and hoping for more coffee. That's kind of the experience that we have. We're bouncing from one sense to the other. But we really have the power to change our mood. But we lack the ability to do this. Music, especially, and there's a whole science of that's dedicated to this. There's, I think, music therapy. It's like there's music because it's speaking to you on a non-intellectual level, but it's speaking to you on this emotional, intuitive level. It has the ability to sneak in there and change your emotions even if you don't feel like it. I know in my day when we're going through a tough time in life or a bad relationship or whatever it was, you put on, I don't know, the Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street and just misunderstood, and you felt it, and everything just, it was speaking to you on this deeper level. Music gets in there and really gets your body going. That's the reason when you go to a football game, they start playing, you know, da-da-da-da-da, dun, 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 dun. The music, it gets you pumped, it gets you excited. But before, in the olden days, they don't do it anymore, but before they go into battle, they'd play music because it bypasses whatever your brain is thinking, whatever fears or insecurities or distractions you have, and it just takes over and gets you all pumped and all psyched. We can use music and use it to change our mood, to put ourselves in a happier place and to feel better. And just to conclude, I'll say like this, that music, obviously, because it could take over, it could go to a bad place as well. Now, I'm not here to judge, and I don't know. People like to talk about how there's good music and bad music and evil music. I don't know. I love the sound of the tritone. That's that dissonant sound in the Black Sabbath song, Black Sabbath, or the beginning of Jimi Hendrix's Purple Haze. That sound. The church says it's the devil's interval. Am I a devil worshiper? Well, you decide. But anyways, I don't know what's good and what's bad, but I think it's fair to say some music definitely is aggressive and could lead to violence. Some music is aggressively sexual, and it could take a person to a dark place. If you're using music as a way to justify your bad behavior or to manipulate and hurt other people, so that's a bad thing. But don't use music for that. Use music for really what it's designed for. Allow it to penetrate, allow it to take over even without the power of thinking, and allow it to get into your kishkas to help you feel better, to put yourself in a better day, and really feel great about yourself and life. In Jewish law, if you look in the prayer book, in the daily liturgy, there's a prayer that we're supposed to say every day, and if you look in the Code of Jewish Law, you're not allowed to say it. You have to sing it. It's called the prayer for thanksgiving. If you don't sing it, you actually didn't successfully discharge your spiritual obligation. And the point is obvious, because through singing it, no matter what mood you are, no matter what mood you're in, when you show up in synagogue, you start singing, you start thinking about your life, you start thinking about the good things you have in life, and you allow the music to penetrate. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel a lot better about yourself. So use music on that level. I just want to add, I wrote a book about music. It's called Knee Deep in the Funk, Understanding the Connection Between Spirituality and Music. And if anybody's interested, I'll sell it to you. I also have a book about my mullets, so we can talk about that. Anyways, thank you very much.